Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, this is gonna be a really interesting story today. Let me see where we're going with this, because I have to do this just right. With all the stuff that we got going on today, with this Diddy thing and the 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 Gilligan's Island or Fantasy Island cases and sex trafficking and the whole 9 yards. I know we wonder who analyzes these individuals in their behavior patterns. Because I know we can look at the stories that are popping up, and I mean, let's get real. They just didn't come out of thin air. They've been around forever. Just certain individuals with certain statuses have a tendency to draw the most attention. But the question here is, how do, when it's time for them to go to trial and court and all this investigation, who is the person that actually gets involved in the mind of these individuals? Who analyzes their behavior and to see if or not these traits are possible in these individuals? We have someone on the show who does just that. Her story is very interesting too, because during the pre-interview, we talked, and I knew where she grew up. I know a lot about her journey, and more importantly, why all of a sudden she decided to come and share all of this in the social media. I'd like to welcome all the way from Orange County, the one, the only, Dr. Leslie Dobbins. Did I get it right?
And Dobson. Who
welcome to
cares?
welcome to the show, baby girl. You know, we talked yesterday pretty in depth about your career, the people that, well, we didn't give names, but some of the big cases that you've been involved in. Before we even get started, tell the viewers a little bit about Dr. Leslie.
Sure. I'm a forensic psychologist, so I work a lot with people with severe mental illness and people who have committed very, very severe crimes, usually felonies. And I help determine if they need to be patients for their mental health or if they need to be inmates because it wasn't mental health that led to it. And then I help determine the violence recidivism. So how likely are they to reoffend? Um, I've been doing it for about 20 years with a specialty in high risk sexual offending. And yeah, about a year or so ago, I decided to start social media and start sharing my stories and my perspective because so much of our world is hidden and many people don't know how the mind of a predator really works.
When you say high sexual into predators or whatever you want to call it, elaborate a little bit on that for the viewers. What is that profile that would consider that person in that classification?
So normally it would be a sexual psychopath. It's different in every state. So it's usually a person who lacks remorse, enjoys violence, is very sadistic, and engages in ongoing rape or pedophilia.
So you're almost like Clarice Starling on Hannibal Lecter, going into the confinements or the prisons and analyzing these people. Are you analyzing them um, before sentencing, or are you doing a pre-sentence investigation, or you do it after? Which way do you do that?
I do both. So, um, someone might be too bonkers to even stand trial. And so we need to assess if they even understand what they're going to plea. So we work with them in that way. And then once they are going through the trial, I work with the lawyers to help explain what's going on in the mind of this person. And it could be mental illness leading, or it could be that they're a psychopath. So I need to do a lot of testing with them. I need to spend a lot of time with them, go through all the records, collateral information, every which way, any bit of information I can get. I look at all the pictures, the graphics, the crime scenes. I write these lengthy reports, give them to the lawyers, give them to the judge, explain it to the jury, and then they decide. Um, and then I also, on the other end, help determine if people should be released from prison or state hospital systems by gauging their likeliness to be violent.
What kind of tests? I don't know if you're allowed to do this. Are we talking about tests like a PPI or PPM test? And if so, what
Yeah.
do those tests consist of for the viewer so they can, because what I'm doing with the viewers is taking them down the mind of someone like you, almost like the movie Hannibal Lecter. Remember when she gave him that book and said in the cell, say, "Hey, help us find the Buffalo Bill, whatever they called him." So you do that, but when you're analyzing these people, what are some of the tools that is used in your trade?
We use a lot of objective psychological tests. So the MMPI, the PAI, they are tests where you would answer true or false, or you would answer 1 through 4, and there are hundreds and hundreds of questions. And I use a lot of different tests so that I can look at each item analysis. I mean, I analyze the crap out of these tests and I compare them to other tests to see if it's similar. So these tests are normed on people who are taking the test. So for me, I'm a 41-year-old Caucasian woman in California with a certain education level. So if I take that test, we're going to look at a sample of 40-year-old Caucasian women in California with similar education. And we're going to compare. Are my answers consistent with most people? Are my answers really off base? Are they consistent with somebody who has schizophrenia? Or am I trying to look schizophrenic, but I'm not doing a very good job at it? So we do lots of that and then a lot of interviewing, structured interviews.
How do you determine? You just said something. Am I trying to appear? So let's just play devil's advocate. I'm being accused of something and I want to play crazy. Can you, how do you know which test will show that I'm trying to manipulate the test? And how do you know which test you're going to apply to me? Is it based on my crime or is it based on you getting to know me as an individual? And then you turn around and say, I'm going to administer this test and this test and this test. And then how do you know if I'm faking either one?
Well, first we go by grade level and reading level. So I never want to give anyone a test that they don't understand, right? Because then I'm not going to get the real information. I got to know you know how to read it. And then I'm going to look at their scales within these tests, and they tell me if you're consistent, if you're infrequent for your population, if you're trying to look more sick, if you're trying to look like you're not sick, if you're trying to look happy, but you're really actually quite depressed. So they have all these hidden metrics in them, and you really can't beat the test. And I've tried. I've taken many of them.
Why is it that you can't beat the test? That's kind of curious. Why is it that you cannot beat the test?
Because they're so research and science based that
Mm.
the questions draw upon many elements of the human mind, and they're asked in very different ways, and you wouldn't understand the metrics behind it as the person taking the test.
Let me go. We said we're going off script. My mind is in that Hannibal Lecter movie. So let's just use an example. Let's go back a while. Let's go back to that O.J. Simpson case. Do you think that these instruments or these tools was used in his case? Would they be used in his case?
I don't know if he had a full psychological evaluation. I would imagine he did, but they relied so much more on physical evidence, right? And then the attorneys really did such a beautiful tap dance manipulating everyone.
When you see
But
cases like that, and if you was in that courtroom, based on everything that happened, would you have went to the judge? Because you did tell me off camera that the judges respect you. would you have recommended to either side that this needed your methods needed to be implied on all parties involved because you had questionable police, you had Furman, you had OJ, you had all kind of questionable things. Do you think, looking back, that what you know should have been implemented and maybe or maybe not would have changed maybe the trajectory outcome of that whole particular case?
100%. I mean, if we had looked at OJ as a psychopath and we had testing to prove he was a psychopath, we could show that he was dishonest and the jury would have believed him a lot less, right? So it's about what people think at the end of the day. And I don't think it came across well enough that he was so dangerous. And as we saw later, he kept committing crimes, right? He kept doing naughty psychopathic things after he didn't go to prison forever for that.
Do you ever, because your testimony is being asked for in numerous high profile cases, we won't get into those cases because I don't want to jeopardize your safety, but you've been in some pretty high profile cases. What is what do you what do you what do you fear most about your role in putting away people that can later come back and haunt you?
I think that's the biggest fear, right? Is are they going to see me as the person who put them in prison? Uh, but what I try to do is explain that I'm hired by the court system to determine the truth. I don't make the tests, I don't make the decisions. I take all the information and I find a percentage of likeliness that you are going to do it or that you did it.
Have there ever been moments that your information has has been not proven the most effective means for somebody? Because let's get real, we deal with a system of numbers and logic and science, and a lot of times when you're dealing with human beings, a lot of times those things don't pan out. Has that ever happened to you?
Definitely. A lot of judges have told me that they don't respect psychology and that they don't think there's any place for me. They'd rather listen to a CPS worker who's done no testing and has very low education or limited time in the role, very new CPS workers. Um, so people won't listen to me in that regard because they have kind of their buddies and their comfort in the court system. But then also, uh, sometimes I'm wrong, right? So sometimes I think someone is more dangerous than they are or less dangerous. And we'll have rebuttal experts come in and do similar testing, but they'll have a slightly different view of it. And the lawyers will use both of our examples and kind of spin it and explain it to the judge and jury who then decide. But I mean, I've had like a very schizophrenic woman on the stand and I'm saying, I'm trying to explain how schizophrenic she is. She's hearing voices, she's talking to herself. And during the trial, the judge turns to her and says, "Please be quiet."
Knowing that
That
she's
I'm trying
displaying what
she's
you put in your notes. How does
I'm
that make
trying to explain she's responding to voices and the judge keeps saying, "Please be quiet. You're going to get kicked out of court." She can't. She doesn't know that she's responding to voices.
when you when
She
you
thinks they're real.
when you see a system like that? I'm gonna tell you where we're going with this. We're gonna go deeper. We going down this rabbit hole. But when you see shit like that, and here it is in your report that this person is schizophrenic, they're hearing, and the judge looks over to him and tells her, "Shut up." How does that make you feel?
I want to scream. I just want to scream, but I don't want to get kicked out of like every court. I've been kicked out of a few. You have to respect the judge, right? That's just how the system works. And it's infuriating. And that's another reason why I love social media, because we don't have to limit what we say. We're not sitting in front of a judge and respecting them. We're not in front of politicians. We can use social media to say, hey, there are realities that do not line up with the world this shit is, the way this world is structured.
What do you think? You've been in this system for several years. There is a need for science when it comes to cases, criminal or whatever. You got to, as harsh as that may seem, somebody has to evaluate the people that are doing things. That's your job. That's your job. What needs to be changed? You've been in the system long enough. You're coming forward with your social media now to, and I don't want to use the word expose because it has nothing to do with expose. You
Mm.
see a crack or a flaw in something, and your expertise brought you to bringing it to the forefront. What are some of those things that you see that needs to be addressed?
I think judges who are over a certain age need to have education, and they need to be well versed on all of the new scientific stuff. I mean, I'm renewing my license, I'm taking CEs every few months, I'm educating myself. I don't think they are, especially the judges in family court and dependency court. And they can't just live in these little bubbles until their careers are over. It really fucking with people's lives.
When you're talking about, man, you share some stuff. We'll get into that off camera as it deals with family court. What are some of the things that are fucking up the court system when you say, especially in family court? Elaborate on that a little bit.
My biggest pet peeve right now is mandated reunification therapy. So the case that was recently in the news was a woman in Colorado who um, there are numerous counts of sexual abuse against her daughters by her ex-husband. Husband, I'm not sure where they're at in the divorce. And the judge mandated that the brothers still have to go to therapy with the dad, who knowingly sexually assaulted their sisters. And the mom said, fuck no, she didn't show up. They put her in jail.
Because she violated the court order.
Yeah. And if Colorado didn't have this weird law or bill about mandatory reunification, that would have never happened. Arizona just took it away. They just said you can't do that anymore, which is wonderful. But we're making change. It's just slow.
What are some of the other things that have been pretty much crazy as it relates to family court? Because you probably have just as many people in family court dealing with, custody and just financials. I mean, what are some of the other things besides that's needs to be changed that you're seeing?
Um, I mean, I don't get me started, but
Oh, get started. We got time.
um, the overuse of the term Munchausen's by proxy is so fucking ridiculous.
Hey, wait a
So
minute. What was
Munchau-
that word?
Munchausen's by proxy. It is a disorder that is extremely rare. And it is where usually a mother is making her kids sick because she wants attention, right? So if I'm taking my kid to the doctor, I get attention for being a good mom. I have a role to play. I have an identity. I'm almost like this nurse, right? Every fucking CPS worker, when the mom is saying, hey, the dad abused my kids, I'm taking my kids to the doctor, especially for a rape kit.
Mhm.
The judge and CPS says that was an unnecessary invasive procedure. That mom must have Munchausen's by proxy. And the judge says, well, you're CPS in my county, so I'm going to believe you.
Wow.
I've literally stood in the hallway outside of courtrooms and heard the judge say, she's not coming in. I'm going with my CPS team.
What you're bringing back some serious ass memories here. What remedies do individuals have to prevent this? Because you're right. If they're not part of the legal team, you're pretty much fucked. But you're thinking in
Mm.
the same process that this is a system that would at least look at the facts and say, blah blah blah, instead of saying, well, this person is with CPS, this person is a guardian ad litem, and they're this is how we play it. But I know firsthand. I know firsthand. I've been in situations where the guardian ad litem were in my home collaborating with the mother and the stepmother, and it did not come out until after the plea agreement because we agreed that the guardian ad litem would have the final say. I had no idea this woman had been in my house. I had no idea that this woman had a boyfriend that left and took the kid. None of this came out because we're putting our trust in a system to find out some of the systems may be broke. And I remember asking the judge, no, my lawyers, I brought it to my lawyers. It's like, well, you're going to spend more money to go back to court to prove. And I mean, this literally had me psychologically fucked up because I was played by a game, and I saw that lady. She was a lawyer. I saw her, and she could not look at me.
Mm.
What else do you see happening in this system that needs to change outside of that?
I think it's grossly underfunded, and that's probably why they don't have proper education. So you've got people in powerful roles who are not educated enough to be in them. Um, I think about like the county of San Bernardino CPS, Child Protective Services, is being sued left and right now because of how much corruption there is in the system. Um, I testified on behalf of a mother, and in the CPS report, it said that I can't be trusted because the mother and I went to the same university. I went to that university 15 years before her. I did not know this mother. I'm an objective licensed psychologist, and the CPS worker who did not have a license and had just been hired 1 year before wrote that about me in her fucking report, and the mom lost her kids.
Wow.
I mean, I'm glad people are suing CPS, and I think people need to do it more to wake the system the fuck up.
How many other individuals are on pretty much the same crusade as yourself? You can't be the only one. And I know this, like I said, from experience. I shared a little bit with you. You can't be the only one that's seeing a flaw in this system. And the tripped out part about it is because of these flaws, it affects the family financially, emotionally, and then it affects them as they relate to society in the legal process, period. They begin to have no respect for a system that's supposed to be um, understanding, compassion, and bias, and looking at the facts from experts. That's what I want to use, expert. How many other people do you know is on the same journey that you're on?
So many. I mean, I work with so many lawyers who are just they're taking these cases for free because they're so livid about how the parents or the children have been treated. Um, in the criminal justice system, I mean, people who are, I actually don't know what happened, but the man 2 days ago that was going to be killed by the death penalty, and they had proven that he didn't do the murder.
Hmm?
I actually didn't follow up on what happened there, but there's just so much corruption and lack of education and experience all the way up to someone's death. It's just wild to me. So there's tons of lawyers and advocates and nonprofits. The nonprofit Rights Behind Bars is incredible, trying to bring justice to prisoners who are harmed in an unnecessary way. It's not a part of their punishment or consequence. So on both sides, right, people are fighting to bring consequences to the bad guys and then also fighting to make sure that the conditions are safe and that people are having consequences that line up with what they deserve for their crime and that justice is served.
Let's talk about something that's circulating. Your job is to evaluate individuals. Let's just use this P. Diddy case, for instance. Let's just go and throw it out there. I'd rather speak to you about it because you interview people that do these things. We talked about this off camera. If you got called in to evaluate this individual, I know you've been in this field for quite some time and you're already going to have your opinion on what he actually is because you know how to analyze. I'm more concerned about the individuals that participated in the event, that came to the parties, the celebrities. What's your take about their profile status for participating, for going, even if you saw all this stuff going on? How can you live with yourself to walk out of a house and see? I don't know who was there. I never been invited to a Diddy party. But if I'm hearing what I think, young girls being served on tables and the rooms, the Vaseline, the coconut oils, what does that say about the people that are walking into these things and walking away and not saying a motherfucking word? What's your take on that?
I think so much of Hollywood and the music industry is so vapid and narcissistic. And if it's not happening to me, then I'm not speaking up because I don't want to lose my money. I don't want to lose my career. I don't want to lose my chances of fame. And it's just so selfish. And there needs to be a level of accountability as we start naming all of these people. And I think, honestly, the thing they're going to respond to is not getting money and not having their jobs, right? So make them pay the victims, make them pay for nonprofits, make them pay for therapy, take away their money.
If you got called in to evaluate P. Diddy in general, because that's where it's stemming around. But we're also talking about multiple companies that basically, since he got arrested, have shut down, resigned, the whole 9 yards. I'm pretty sure this rabbit hole goes deeper. But what kind of test would you administer to him to show whether he is crazy, whether he did use to play Mr. Untouchable? I mean, what are some of the things that you would give to him to either show that he has something wrong with him?
I would give him everything we could. I would start with IQ testing. I would look at psychopathy, see if he's a psychopath.
Why IQ
I
test?
would look at
Hold on a minute. Why IQ testing? I'm just curious. You mentioned that first. Why that?
um, I want to know how functioning his brain is in all areas.
Okay.
And I wouldn't want it to be an excuse in any way.
Mhm.
Like, let's say you know, he has impulse control issues. I want to be able to show that on an IQ test, we looked at his impulsivity and we showed that he had a stable and consistent ability to engage in conversation and all the tasks.
Right.
So, this is a guy who's constantly, until he dies, going to be trying to get out of trouble, right? So I want a baseline of how this guy functions, and I want to know that when he uses a lie in the future, like saying he has dementia or something, it is very unlikely, right? So that's the baseline. The IQ tells me kind of who is this person? How does their brain function? How are they reading and responding to all the other tests?
And then what's the
But I would do a psychopath test, definitely. I would do a lot of violence risk assessments. So you're looking at their interpersonal manipulation, but you're also looking at their behavioral impulsivity, criminal versatility, promiscuity, parasitic lifestyle, lack of remorse. So we're, we have tests that look into all these small little facets. Um, I would 100% do a polygraph on him. I would do a Rorschach, that ink blot test,
oh yeah.
just to see the kind of
What he
shit he projects onto it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
And I would do a PPG, which is the condom catheter.
What is that? Is that where you
So
watch videos and get a response from the penis, see if it
yeah,
affects and so forth? Man, that's cool. Why would you suggest that? Just out of curiosity. This is your field. Why would you suggest that?
I would want objective evidence of pedophilia.
Hmm.
He may not be a pedophile, but this is how you'd find out.
Let's go back to the people that attended this. And then I'm gonna go to the next question. What does that say about the people that attended these parties? The Kevin Hart's, the LeBron Jameses, the now all of a sudden it's Denzel Washington's been brought up in this. I mean, what does that say? This is it, and this is even more tripped out. Even the Usher thing, and I met Usher before. This is even tripped out. Now you live with this dude for 2 years, and then you go on David Stern or Howard Stern show, and he asked you a simple question: would you? This was key, and people don't get this or they don't pay attention. Would you take your kids to the Diddy house? He said, hell no. But, but you're trying to validate a dude that did something to you that was witnessed by people. What does that say for his character as a forensic scientist?
There's something wrong with a lot of these people. We just say that. I mean, there's culture, there's this industry, there's upbringing. We have all of these different factors, but at the end of the day, it's people saying, I'm not going to stand up and say that there are injustices occurring. Those aren't people I'd want over for dinner.
I know you have to do a lot of evaluations, but when you see somebody like that, that's willing to, I almost call that the captive, the Beauty and the Beast syndrome, where you're a grown man now and you're being captivated by your imprisoner that violated you, but you know it's wrong to an extent because you just clearly said you wouldn't even bring your kids to this particular thing. More importantly, you won't even come forward to say that what he did was wrong, period. How do you put those people in
They're
the classification?
terrified. I mean, I think they're terrified, and the fear of retaliation is so sincere that, I mean, we're talking about people losing their lives over calling him out. I mean, the FBI has a list of people they think died because of Diddy. So, you know, it's a terrifying place to be. To not call it out, you're also in your mind protecting your kids, you're protecting your family. So it's this juxtaposition of strength, I think, and what are you going to lose?
Why does it seem like the legal system is pro- protecting this? Because let's get real. You've been in this field. This ain't some shit that just happened overnight. We've been hearing about this shit forever and ever and ever. We heard about it with the Epstein, and all of a sudden he had even more bigger people flying out to Never Land, and all of a sudden you got billions of dollars, and you wind up dead, and we as humans forgot what just happened, and now we hear this stuff has been going on and on and on and on. As a person that deals with this, what do you think is wrong with society as a whole that we are accepting it? First part of that question. And the second part of that question, because you also deal with the judicial system, why haven't they done anything to stop it? Because it just didn't happen overnight.
A lot of the judicial system is quite corrupt. I mean, it's known that a lot of the judges did participate in these parties and attended these clubs and dinners where illegal things were occurring, right? So we've got protected people in powers of authority. I'm sorry, in roles of authority. But it's what we're fed, right? I mean, no one really heard about the massive rape case coming out of France. And I mentioned it in some videos, and the videos got millions and millions of views. And a lot, well, mostly all Americans were saying, I have not seen this on the news. And I said, that's because our news is not showing us the world, right? Our news is showing us what they want us to see. And it's so jaded.
Wow.
An
I'm just,
example is some of my, like I publish articles all the time, and people in other countries will click the link to my article, even if it's on my website, and they aren't able to open it because the country is preventing that American link.
I've heard of that
So I'll,
happening for people's
yeah,
social media that they can't get in. You mentioned the individuals that attended these events and these activities. As a person that digs deep into the psyche of a human being, how can you? I know people don't want to lose their status. You know, people who are put in a situation of power, money, and fame, they will fight to hold on to it at any cost, even if, and I can see that now, even if it means what you see, you don't tell. And that's kind of hard for me to grasp, that I will go into a sanctuary and see people being tortured, people being kidnapped, people being drugged, induced to do things. How can a person walk out, not just get rid of the fame and fortune? I'm just talking to you as a person that gets inside the mind. How can a person who we look at on movies, TVs, on the football field, basketball courts, in the judge's chamber, participate and allow these things to happen? What kind of fucking mind are these people registered up under?
the same kind of person who sees a guy pounding on his wife and walks away and doesn't help, right? It's people are people are very jaded, but also people are ignorant as fuck and selfish. And I mean, as a psychologist, I've seen thousands and thousands of people on my couch, right? And talking to them, and the egocentric mindset, especially in America, is just it's so real. You think people think about you. You think people really care about you, but maybe they think about you 10% of 1 hour of one day every other month. I mean, it's that people really care about themselves. They're very egocentric and selfish. And to risk anything in your own life to help another person is actually quite a rare quality.
Why do you think that's happened? And why is it so prevalent now? It wasn't like that. Well, I'm not going to say that. It was like that before, but it was dealt with such things as racism, segregation, and so forth. But you would think that as individuals that we have grown to understand compassion with everything that we went through. uh, it wasn't even a couple years ago. You know what I mean? There is no compassion. There is that, from your standpoint, is that because of we glorify? Now, this is what I think personally. I think we are our own demons, and we put this out there by glorifying these entities and giving them the power to do what they do. I mean, if you see it, I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to buy Ciroc liquor if I know you're doing these things, but we have a tendency to embrace and glorify that. What does that say for us?
It's just the way we've been raised in this culture. I mean, I think especially American culture. It's different in other countries. It, we are, I mean, what you described is just very, very, very westernized, very American.
When you say it's different in other countries,
It's
what do you mean it's different in other countries?
um, I think that there's such a community mindset in other countries, and we are, God, especially in Los Angeles, like we're just very individualistic. We You fight for yourself and your family, but you go to these other countries and other parts of the world and they fight for their community. They don't see themselves as an individual. They see themselves as their neighborhood, as their tribe. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a safer way to live.
You have a family.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in England for a long time, and England isn't the best example, but what I absolutely loved about England was the pubs. There was a pub on every corner, and I knew if I went into that pub, people would be kind. I would see faces I knew, and that is where people go when they need just to feel some warmth and some love and some booze. But it was it was this culture that, I don't see that here in California.
Right, right. You have a family, a
Yeah,
husband,
I do.
and a daughter. A daughter, right? A daughter.
Yeah, I have a daughter and a son.
What scares you the most with your job, what you do for a living? Now that you're coming out on social media, the door, the door is open now. People know you. What are you afraid of most about what you're unleashing upon the world? I know it's education because that's how I'm looking. I'm not looking at it as a threat, but we do live in a world
Yeah.
like you said where people will take the littlest of a topic and turn it all kind of ways. What are you most afraid of about your message that's going out?
Like you said, when it's misinterpreted. Um, the fucking shopping cart video. I mean, it probably has 100 million shares at this point. I say I'm not going to return my shopping cart if my kids are in the car. And the whole point of that video was to say, trust your intuition. If you feel unsafe, fuck the judgment of other people who are watching you. Put your shopping cart not in the turn area, but maybe to the side, right? If you feel unsafe, you listen to yourself, you go somewhere, you survive, and then you can reflect back on the situation and you protect your children. But that video went insane. I got the most obscene death threats, handwritten, delivered. The FBI's picked up numerous of cases and the threats. Local police, they were real threats. People are to this day being charged and followed. And it was because of a fucking shopping cart video. So that's my fear is being taken out of context when the fight is for justice and education and safety and empowerment.
Have you been approached by any political leaders on your beliefs and the thought that you want to see change? Has any politicians or the police department or anybody come to your aid to help you amplify this message?
No, not really. I mean, celebrities celebrities have asked me to join forces with bills. Um, I'm filming some kind of tell-all television shows with HBO and Netflix, but it's going to take one will come out in a few months, but some will take a couple years. Um, I'd say the most common call I get is an investigative journalist who is wanting help figuring out cases that they then intend to turn into a docuseries. But no, not politically. And I was born in Canada. I can't be president, but fuck, I'd like to make some change at a higher level in this country.
You mentioned, we talked about this before we wrap up. I- I'm a firm believer in order to make change, you got to start with policy. Get rid of old policies, start implementing and enforcing new policy in order to make change. If you had to make three policies right now based on everything that's going on, what would those three policies be? Because you just mentioned that some people asked you to join their campaign. What would the three policies be?
I would censor social media when it comes to minors. I would force Instagram and TikTok to use their AI capacity to take down mommy vlogging pages where they are zooming in on a baby flicking their tongue next to something that looks like a penis, and then they have 14 million saves and likes by people who look like pedophiles. So that is such an obvious thing that we could change through AI. You just have to you write a fucking algorithm, machine learning. It's not that hard. We could take that down. Um, I would stop forced reunification therapy 100%. And I would stop CPS from being this determining factor in these cases. Those are big things that I harp on right now.
Those are some pretty big things to talk about, period.
Yeah.
This is a good question. And I should have asked this first. What made you get into this field?
Ever since I was a little kid, I couldn't stand for injustice. I could not watch adults sweep shit under the rug. And I would sit there and I would say to the adult, hey, you just swept that shit under the rug. Why? Why are you being so fucking fake right now when I know you don't like that person or they've harmed you? And no one would answer me. And I started in psychology. I wanted to work with the most dangerous criminals in the world because I wanted to understand the mind at the grandest capacity so that I could find justice and understand how the mind works all the way to from sweeping it under the rug to committing serial murders and cannibalism, and I've had patients rip their eyeballs out. Like I wanted the full vast understanding of the human mind.
How in the heck does a person process going into the minds of individuals like that? Like how do you do that? How do you go there and process all that, knowing that what they did was out of trauma? So basically, their traumas is impacted on their crime. How do you take that and filter it?
If it's trauma, I don't think all criminals' crimes are from trauma. But if it is, I mean, I approach it in a really non-judgmental way. I mean, I can sit with a serial killer, I can sit with a presidential assassination attempter, whatever we call them, and and just say, hey, what's going on? I want to get to know you. I want to learn how you think, how you see the world, and what led to your actions. Because if I can understand you, then I can prevent actions you've done in other people.
Give me an example of somebody that you work with like that. You said you went into you the craziest. Just you don't have to mention their name, but give me two examples of two individuals that you got into their mind and you was like, holy crap, and you was able to do exactly what you said, prevent it from happening.
Let's see. Yeah, I worked with a very high-ranking gang member for a long time. And we had this mutual respect, I'd say, if you could call it. I put money on his books. I got him extra canteen things from the hospital we were in. They'll kind of allot free tickets that you can give patients or inmates. And in turn, he would tell me what was really going on. So he would tell me who was bringing in the drugs, what staff were sleeping with patients. Um, and he was the one who told me that when I first got pregnant, that the inmates were taking bets on who could kick my belly first. And so I think he was a full-blown psychopath and I was nothing but a toy to him. But I learned what a psychopath was by engaging with him. And his cold, callous, tit for tat demeanor was incredibly educational for me.
Really?
Um, yeah, and I know he saw me on TV the other day and got a message to me just to let me know. Um, but again, that mutual respect. Psychopathy doesn't mean harm all the time, right? It doesn't mean murder.
It just sounds like Hannibal Lecter. You know that, right? What's another? What's another?
Um,
Another one?
My mind goes to extreme cases of schizophrenia. So I had a client who I don't think he had multiple personalities, as we would call it, but he would hallucinate so profoundly um, that I couldn't talk to him. I had to talk to his voices. So I had to learn the names of all the other people that were standing around him, and I had to say, hey Bob, is it cool if Brittany sits over there and Drew stands there and Sally does this, and I want to talk to Nate. And then he would mimic their voices, and then I would get the whole team on board, and I would, you know, calm them down so that I could talk to him very briefly. And we did this for over a year. And what happened was in a year, I just got to talk to him a little sooner. And nothing changed, but I didn't have to calm the voices down as much. He started to trust me, and I got access to him directly just a little quicker by the end.
Now that sounds like the movie like Glass, where the guy had the seven different personalities. This shit really
Right.
this shit really exists, huh? So Hollywood really portrays the shit that's going on in society.
Yeah, if I had to rank Hollywood movies for realness, I would say, the recent Joker, awesome. Shutter Island, perfect with delusional disorder and paranoia. Um, I think those are two of my favorites. I would say Hannibal Lecter is such bullshit. No, not true. No way. And the ending of Dexter, fuck no, that would never happen.
You know what? Thank you so much for coming on the show. And I encourage people to follow you, subscribe, like, go on your journey. You definitely got that beast mindset. You're bringing informative information to the world. Not everybody's going to resonate to what you're saying. I tell people that off the bat. You're going to have those individuals in this society that are going to take good information and twist it for whatever reasons. But hopefully the individuals that can see through your message would grasp that message and will pass it on forward. Before we leave, how can the viewers reach out to you and support your cause?
Right now, it's just Dr. Leslie on TikTok and Instagram, and I'll be dropping my podcast soon. It's called Intentionally Disturbing, and we are archiving episodes right now, trying to figure out the best time to drop it.
Tell the viewers a little bit about your podcast. Tell us what's it about. I'm intrigued now. What's it about?
It's me talking to real people about real things, but using forensic psychology interviewing skills, a little bit of interrogation. So, getting to those moments of the depth, the darkness, the things people don't want to talk about, and drawing it out of them.
Remember, you heard it here first. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.